Community Heart Media. Your voice, your heart, your opportunity. Welcome to tonight's show. Well, hello everyone, and thank you for watching and listening to Community Heart Media. Julio and Mark are hopefully sorting some things out in the studio in Northwest FM 98.9. But just want to welcome everyone and hope I've had a great week so far, and want to welcome our amazing guest tonight, Fiona. Fiona, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
And before we were on air, I was sort of just getting to know a little bit about you, and it sounds like you've got an amazing story to share. So I'm so curious to hear everything about, who you are and your background and everything. Before Julio and Mark join us, how's your week been? How's your week been?
My week. Well, I'm very excited to have a voice because earlier in the week and this afternoon I did not have one, which is fun. But
really?
Yeah.
What happened?
I've just been a bit unwell, so I was feeling it going croakier and croakier, and I'm like, no, I've got to speak. But so all being that, I've had a really great week. Yeah, I love these warmer weather days in Melbourne, and it's been a good week.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a beautiful day, and it's nice that it is warmer as well. And I hope you start to feel better. And I'm glad that you got your voice for tonight, because we have a lot to cover and a lot to talk about. Well, I just want to say, do you want to start with a brief introduction about yourself to all our listeners and viewers out there this evening? Fiona Griffiths, as I sort of put on some of our social media, if anyone is wanting to learn to write or to have a voice and have a say, Fiona is the person to ask any questions to anytime. So Fiona's going to give it, a background detail to who she is and a bit of background about herself. And feel free to put any comments or questions up on the chat, or if you go back and watch us as well. So Fiona, tell me a bit about yourself, because I've just been, briefly talking to you off air, but I'm keen to know a bit about who you are.
Yeah. Who I am. I am a mum is my favorite thing. Even more favorite than that, I'm a Gigi to two incredible little humans. So that is always it's just stunning. It's such a privilege. I love being a mum. I love being a Gigi. So I'm
just guessing here, a Gigi is a grandmother?
Grandmother, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, grandmother. Nice. It's the best. I love to travel. I am.
And so you're a mum of how many children?
Oh, you want there? I am a mum of three adult children and two fantastic in-law kids as well, who I adore, and two small little humans. Yeah, so they are the delight of my life. I am also a lover of bike riding. I am a lover of all things curious. And you used that word before, which I love. I love just finding out about things, finding out about life. I am a writer. I never thought I could be a writer. I never thought I was creative at all. But here I am. And I'm a book coach. And I also do some other work on the side. I'm a project manager as well for a social enterprise, which I love. Yeah.
Very cool. So it sounds like you've got so many things that we want to unpack. Now, before we even get started, I'm curious about this bike riding, because I'll tell you a story of mine that happened this week. But where do you like to go cycling?
I cycle, along the Dandenong Trail. So it's at the end of my street and it goes on forever. And I am getting better at going longer distances. Not that long. So let's get excited about, I tend to do sprint. It's usually a 15K back and forward in the time that I have. And I have only fallen off once, and that was stationary when I turned around to say goodbye to someone. Have not made that mistake again. Yeah. But I love it. I love just being able to go and enjoy my solitude as well. As a bit of an introvert, it's a nice thing to do. How about you?
Well, yeah, there is my story. I have been cycling for, I picked it up when I moved to Melbourne about 5.5 years ago. cycling along beautiful Maribyrnong Trail. And yesterday I decided, right, I'm going to get up and I'm going to cycle to work. It's not that far, about 7 Ks each way.
Yeah.
I can do it in 20 minutes each way. Well, I was foggy in the morning, icy, didn't realize it, and I completely rolled over. They thought I had minor concussion, hit my head, and the bruises are coming up today. So that has been my story this week. It has not been fun whatsoever. I got into
that
work
is
and I was sort of shaking a little bit, and then had to go and do some media things. I thought, what have I done? So not fun. To anyone watching and listening out there, be careful cycling. Even if you know the track, be cautious.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It is fun though. It is fun.
And yeah, exactly. And welcome, Julio. Thanks for joining us tonight as well.
Well, thank you. And I've just been fixing Mark's little technical problem, so back online now. Hopefully he's all right, coming very soon, but we'll see how we go. I like the discussion about riding. It's been really good hearing you guys. And
do you like to cycle as well? Don't make the mistake I did, Julio. Don't be thinking, oh, it's beginning of August, it's summer, when it's not.
Well, I have to start training. I've got 150K to ride soon, because I do the cancer challenge every single year. So I have to hop on a bike, raise funds for cancer. So that's my project.
Good on you. I need to do something like that too. Definitely. Put that up on our Facebook page, Julio. Definitely.
Yes, I will.
And Fiona was just introducing yourself. And so, Fiona, talk to us a bit about you being an author. And this week is pretty significant as well, I hear.
Yes. Yeah. Me as an author is, I sort of fell into it, which is really cool. And today I first wrote 12 years ago. I wrote, and I've sort of nudged into writing a memoir, which is not an autobiography as such. It's where you write about part of your life. And usually it's for other people more than you. And so I did that 12 years ago, and sort of put it to the side and got back to normal life. And then recently started writing a lot again. And I released a pre-order for my book today. So yeah, on World Book Lovers Day. So it's all happening. It's all great coincidence. And here I am. So that's good.
And so when you say that you fell into it, talk to us a bit about that. How do you fall into just being an author? Did you train as a journalist, as a writer? Were you always good at English? No?
Yeah, really interesting. I always had a passion for English and English lit. And I was thinking about it today. I used to journal a lot. I went through a lot in my life. There's a lot that happened leading up to this 12 years ago book. And I used to journal to process and to help me really order my thoughts about what had gone on in my life. And so I did a lot of that. And I used to pretend to write poetry, never showed anyone, kept it really, really quiet. And then I was out one day, and I just was like, oh, I think I'm supposed to write my book. And I'm like, I can't do that. That's just too confronting. I can write about anything else, but, I'm supposed to write about my story. And that was really, really intense for me. A lot of shame, a lot of condemnation, all those things that I was like, I don't want the world to know. I don't even want anyone to know, not even my friends. And so it was really, really confronting. So fast, I released it back then, and then took it down pretty quickly, because I was like, this is too intense. Wow. And coming full circle today, I'm releasing it again, pre-order, and it is my writing from 12 years ago, which is fascinating to again put out in the world, because life changes, writing changes, but yeah, it's good. It's good to release it, and there'll be more coming. But yeah, that's how I got here, a very, very condensed version.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a very, very condensed version. I'm keen to hear about it more in terms of where do you start? Like when you said you started journaling, is it like a personal story about certain aspects of your life, or how do you go? And for all of our listeners and viewers out there, if you've got any questions to ask Fiona, how do you go about starting and being like, right, I want to publish a book? Because I must admit that's always been on my bucket list of things to do.
Yeah, publishing a book is such an achievement. It's on a lot of people's bucket lists, a very small percentage actually end up getting there. And it's usually not for the reasons that you'd think it would be. So my story of falling into writing is, it was a process of my journaling, and then when I felt like I was supposed to write my book, and my life of absolute chaos, and how I walked out of that really, really dark tunnel and actually found healing, found wholeness, and ready to move on to that next stage of my life. And that process was really powerful. And I had documented it through my journaling. And so when I was like, oh my goodness, I have to write a book, I can't do that. I had to borrow a laptop to write. Like I didn't have anything. And so I sat down and I started going through my journals, and a lot of the writing was already there. So that was really powerful. That was really powerful. And so I was able to do that. Now, I was not a tech person at all. So I ended up typing on this borrowed laptop, printing out the pages. This is hilarious. And then literally cut and pasting. That was my editing back then, because I just had no idea. It's a bit embarrassing to say now, but but that was my process. I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing about writing, about editing, about publishing. And so I found that I had to be through my healing and through what had gone on with me. I had to have dealt with that pretty much, because writing can be completely beautiful, but it can also be quite terrifying. And so it was really important to work through what my life had been like in order to then write freely. And so this time round, proud to say I can cut and paste the good old tech way, and able to, I know a lot more than I used to. So it's good. But it is about just starting. And for some people, because I journaled, so it was all in my paper, and then on the laptop. Some people say to me, but I don't know how to start. I don't know where to start. And I'm not really good at writing. But I want to tell this story. They'll have a story idea. And I'll be like, have you thought about recording it? Just listen. So you record it. And then people tend to be a lot more free as they're speaking. Or I will sit and ask them questions. And then they just start talking. And the story comes. So and
that's such a good idea. Julio, what are you much of a writer? What would you say?
I was a journal. I used to journal, but most of it was more to do with free thought. So I like putting down ideas, and then doing stuff. So my background's engineering, so I found it easier if I journaled a thought or something I wanted to do and plan how to achieve that. So more how to do things more than actually, writing for the sake of writing. I'm just going to bring Mark on, because apparently he's all right to come and go. So here we go. See how he comes on. Yep. Oh,
he's a bit distant there.
Oh, now he's gone. I think I'll take him off and didn't find out what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, I must admit, Fiona, I always loved writing. I trained as a journalist from a young age. Went to and in broadcasting, and it was one of that. I don't journal. That's the funny thing. But like Julio was saying, I don't mind. I'm always thinking, I must record something. Like these days, everything's on our devices. So I remember something. I'm always like, people were saying, what have you got on this date? And I've got no idea. But I'll go and voice something, and then and then it quickly can just transpose, and it's great. It's it's such a good tool that you can sort of speak out those thoughts, and then that can automatically now be transitioned to a Word document or anything.
It's crazy, isn't it? It is. I mean, that tool is amazing to be able to use. Really amazing.
Highly recommend. And so your book. So you've released a book this week, correct me if I'm wrong. What's the title of this book? And is this the one that you were talking about earlier in terms of the 12 years?
Yeah. So my book is live for pre-order today from my website, and it's called Freedom Lives Here. Yeah, that is me as a little girl. Yeah.
Oh, so adorable. And
Yeah.
tell us a bit about, and if you don't mind, to
Yeah.
go into a bit of detail about those, what it encompasses essentially.
My book.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I talk about it being a book for anyone who has ever walked through shame and condemnation, that voice that tells them they're never enough, the voice that says you can't and you'll never. And for people who are like, they're like, what am I supposed to do with my life as well? There's a bit in that. I grew up in a beautiful, happy home, and then I started to lose belief in who I was, and it led to depression. It led to an eating disorder. It led to postnatal depression and some other things that people would say you are the scum of the earth for. And this whole time it was about a sense of who I thought I was, and the voices that tell you who, society, internal voices, external voices that say you're just not even worth anything. And that plays on us and it weighs us down. But you know what I learned to do, especially when I had small children and I had to just, I was a professional piano teacher. I was very good at my job. I had a very large studio. I, had to look the part. I was in ministry, a whole lot of stuff. And so you learn to put on this, I'm fine. I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking. We do it all the time. And so I spent a lot of years doing that. And inside I was just crumbling and crumbling
Wow.
and crumbling. So, it was just this process of having to come to terms with that and be real about that, and finding a sense of who I was and my worth. But it took a lot of years. It took a lot of years. So, and just finding that sense of identity and that sense of love, and that it doesn't matter actually in the end the mistakes of what you do. You're worthy of love. You are worthy of taking up space in the world, and you're worthy of having a voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that must have been quite a journey for you. And so is the book a combination of many of your diaries and journal entries, is it, as you go through different stages, or?
It kind of is. It kind of is, but it's much more. It's much more of a right than that. It's not like just journal entries. It's a really interesting story, actually. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
that's
And it
so
ends well.
good. And it ends well. Can you let us in on a bit of the ending, or one component of it?
The ending is I come to know who I am, and a little bit of what I really wanted to do with my life. And it led to me writing the book, and it also led to me setting up a not-for-profit. That's
Fantastic.
how that. I set up a not-for-profit with a friend, working with women in the sex industry and trafficked women, holding space for the most vulnerable. We had outreach into brothels all across Melbourne, and it was really it was an amazing time of discovering more about me, but mostly learning how to hold space for people that other work people turn away from. Yeah.
And so unpack that a bit more, because that's huge, to obviously something that, for one, to start, open up a not-for-profit, but something that is such a, an audience we hear about a lot, but we don't necessarily know what's been done to help as well.
Yeah. It was actually this process of us coming together and starting it was one of us finding our voice and finding, that thing inside of you that makes you angry, makes you really happy, makes you cry, makes, like feel like you're alive. And for us, it was this issue of injustice, of trafficking, but also women in the sex industry who no one really knows their stories because they keep them quiet. And it is one of meeting beautiful humans and just learning to see in other people and treat other people like you actually really want to be treated, without agenda one way or another. It's about holding space, and that's really powerful for me. That's probably the number one thing, is to be able to hold space for other people's stories and other people's voice without judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such an industry we don't know a lot about. In fact, well, you know, we might know a lot of history about it, but we don't know what's happening in current circumstances, particularly here in Melbourne. Yeah.
And I think there are lots of opinions about the industry itself, and lots of opinions about trafficking, and they are two separate things, but they do cross over quite a lot for the nature of what it is. And I think, you know, we judge all the time. We see people and we judge them. We make 1,000 judgments by the time someone's opened their mouth.
And so what does this not-for-profit do? How do you support and help those working in the industry?
Okay, so at the time, what we did was we had outreach into brothels across Melbourne. So we would just go in and hold space and spend time and take in gifts and whatever the girls needed. And then we got a grant for a full-time caseworker. So we were able to offer support that way as well. So financial support, emotional support, counselling in family, therapy, and also job readiness if and when someone was ready to move out of the industry. That was never an agenda. So it's just holding space. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Julio, if you wrote a book, what do you think one of the interesting chapters of yours would be, or the semi-ending? What do you reckon?
My end. So I'm interaction, so it'd probably be an action book.
Yeah.
So
nice, of course.
Yes. So the ending will probably be the normal stakes of having a person that is defeating all odds to get some sort of insight towards himself and conquer his worst nightmares. So
that's pretty cool. Idea. That would be your idea. Action oriented.
Yep.
Very cool.
There we go. I'm going to introduce Mark again. See as go. There he is.
Well, there you go, guys. Sorry about all the technical issues today. Don't forget we're on 98.9 Northwest FM, back in the studio and trying to solve all our internet and our issues. Kelly, good to see you, Kelly and Julio, and our amazing guest, Fiona.
Hi.
Tell you what, it's good to be here. And we have our guests. Where's our people making comments? Julio, we've got to get them involved, of course.
Yeah.
We want your comments. Fiona wants to hear all your questions tonight, of course, on the show. And I certainly wouldn't mind talking to someone that knows a bit about internets and computers. Be one of those.
Oh, he's going again.
Oh, and he's just cut out again.
No. There we go. So he's in and out at the moment.
Oh, in and out. That's right, in and out. But hey, just while I'm in, can I just ask a quick question? Fiona, sometimes when you talk, it doesn't seem like what you're talking about. You actually feel like you're talking about someone else. You know, so it's amazing how sometimes people can present as a sort of an A person, but actually feel like a B person.
Yes. I'm trying to work out what the A and B is different.
Well, you know, just the different people. Like when I'm hearing your story about who you say you are, and then you know you actually meet you, and you think, "Hang on, we're talking about two different people here." You know?
Yeah. That's really true. So that was who I used to be, and that's the power of story, and it's the power of, you know, really holding space for other people. Like people held space for me, so I could really have time to cry the ugly cries forever in a day, do whatever it took to really find out about me. And people didn't try and rush me on or do, you know, oh, they're there. We placate people all the time. And so I was able to go on this incredible adventure to where my story of who I used to be, you're right, Mark, is not who I am now. I used to be able to put the mask on, but there's no mask. There's no mask. Yeah.
How did you manage to get over that hurdle of a private life, and like you were talking about before, and that stages that you had to go through to actually release your book?
Yeah.
How did you manage that? How did you manage to go through those stages?
Yeah, it's intense. Like even this time around, like I put my whole life out. You know, it gets worse before it gets better, from what I've said. And I put my whole life out there for everyone 12 years ago. And in the end, I had to get to a point where I was like, I know who I am. I know what I've done, where I've come to, but I know who I am now. And in the end, other people are going to make their own opinions anyway. But it just can't be how we live life. The fear of man is next level. The fear of woman is next level. The fear of just humans. We always make decisions, and what we say and what we don't say, the way we look, what we don't look like, the job that we have, and in the end, I had to make a decision that I wasn't going to live like that anymore, because I had lived like that as a perfectionist, as a concert, like pianist, growing up like a child. And I was like, I can't live like this anymore. So I had to get to that point of going, this is actually not what life is supposed to be. This time round, I'm a bit nervous. I'm a bit nervous all over again that people are going to read my story. It's all out there, not in a ridiculous way, but it's a story. And we like to think that we've really got it way more together than we have, and then we also like to think that other people see us as if we've got it way more together than we actually have. And in the end, it's about getting over yourself. Yeah, but it's hard. It is a process. Yeah. And every writer. Yeah, go. Sorry.
Did you find that you're your biggest critic finally when you released it?
Yeah. Every time I sit down to write, I'm my biggest critic. And really, that's one of the things that you can't listen to that inner voice, because the inner voice on the whole is the biggest liar. And so however you do it, whether it's daily affirmations, whether it's, just believing that you're better than what that voice is saying, you do what you can to get over it. But every creative alive, will come off a stage or come out from releasing a book and going, oh my goodness, it's the worst thing that's ever, I'm the worst human. It just starts and starts. And there's ways to deal with that. But it's really important that you do. Yeah, but everyone faces it. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you're listening to Community Heart Media radio show, and keen to hear from any of our listeners or viewers any comments or questions they have for Fiona about the story, but then also the process of developing the book. Fiona, I'm curious, because I bet there's so many people out there who want to know, well, where do you start? How do you start? So say, for example, I've got a friend who I have suggested to say, write a book about where you're at and about your journey. And so she started jotting some things down, but it's then going, well, then what? What do you do?
Yeah.
How do you get it released? How do you get it online? There's so many different things and skills now. And I could see that one person on our social media had also mentioned, now I'm going to say it wrong, iChat GPT, where people can go write essays and things, and wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
Oh, the bot. Yes, I have thoughts on the bot. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a really interesting thing, because I have lots of people who come to me and say, I've got this great idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fantastic. That's really good. Okay. And where are you up to with the great idea? No, I've just got this great idea. And they might have jotted a few things on different scrap bits of paper, or there'll be a recording. And I'm like, okay. The first thing that I would say to someone is have an overall idea about what you want to do and why. So, because I think the story comes, but some of the other issues, because there are so many courses, free courses, YouTube videos, everything about the steps of writing. So you
Mm.
write, it's going to take you this long, and then you get it edited, and then you get it edited again, and then you can have it, you can put it on Canva even now. And are you going to release it as an ebook? And then you can go to other platforms and they'll design something for you and you can put it out in 30 days.
Yep.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So there are lots of courses for the practicals like that. The biggest hurdles I find for people, they lose sight of why they're writing, who they're writing to, how they're going to write. So it's those, why, what, who, when, how, where. We work through them all. These questions about, so you want to write a book. Okay, so what's it going to be about? And you can unpack that. And then who do you want to read it? And what we tend to do when we're writing is we just write. And then you'll say, who's it for? Oh, everyone. This will be okay for everyone. And we write so broadly that it misses the mark of anyone. And so one of the first things I say is that, so who are you writing for? Give me one person, describe them, give them a name. Who is this person that you're writing for?
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And then at the end, once this person has read your book, what do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel? What transformation do you want them to have? And it might be, I can be a superhero too, or I loved that story, or, right through to, actually, I can do this. I can walk through my healing. I'm brave enough to. Or it could also just be, I loved this book. I fell in love with the characters, lots of things. And then what do you want them to say to people about your book? And with those questions, you'll discover a bit more of the meat and where you're heading. Because we just start writing, it's really important to have a goal about where you're going. The other thing that sometimes happens is people do it one of two ways. They write from the beginning all the way through to the end of the story. And that works for some people. They just write and write and write and write. Other people come in and out of their story. So they might write chapter 3 or something exciting happens there. So they'll write chapter 3 and then they'll want to write the end. And it depends. It sort of depends how you're made up. Depends whether you're very, very logical in your thinking and or whether you're like a bit all over the place in a creative, brilliant way. And you'll be a spark today to write, about the middle and what happens then. Sometimes it's harder to bring all together, but it's both ways work really well. Yeah.
And we've got a question from one of our viewers, Daniel. He says, how did you find the editing process? Did you have an external editor, alpha, beta readers, or just self-edit?
Yeah. Well, this is a really good question. It does come a bit back to the bot, chat GPT. So I don't love it. And I'm not, nor do I think at this stage it's going to take over everyone's writing jobs, but I am cautious of how the process is unfolding. As far as editing, what people tend to do when they're writing their first draft is, in their brain, they're editing along the way. This is another thing that stops people from actually finishing a book, is when they're doing the first draft, they just keep editing and changing the word until they find before the whole book is out. And so that editing process is really important that you leave till after you've got a first draft. Doesn't matter. You're going to write a whole lot of words that won't end up in your final story, but it's getting them out. If we edit as you go, you end up never finishing, because you just want to make it so perfect. And so what you'll do is you'll write and just let the words come out however they come out. And then going back, there are words that are unnecessary. I always get authors to do their own edit, the next edit, and get rid of all those words that are unnecessary. And we talk about what they look like. And then depending on the level of the book and the level of the dream about where the person might want the book to go, it then depends on how much editing gets done and where we go. I had this first book I self-edited, and then I had a professional editor. You need to find an editor that knows your voice, because you write with your voice, which is so important. And then you'll send it to an editor who is very good at their job, but they put in words that you'd never use. And straight away it's gone from your book to a very good edited distant book. And what we're discovering more and more is that people are more interested in a story that doesn't have to be brilliant, but you have to be, they really want people's voices to be in there. You really want, we're turning even more into storytelling, listening people. And I love that. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but we do have to have voices that,
like the active voice.
Yes. And just even the author's clear personality and
Wow. So would you consider that? So do you consider that you need to read books as well, like just for you to get the idea of a rhythm, like writing, like anything else? Like, how important is it to read books, to read other novels?
Very, very, very important. I am a bit weird in that, and it's not ideal, but I tend not to read while I'm writing, in the middle of a writing book, because I can get influenced by other people's voices and intimidated as well. Like I haven't got that fear of man thing certainly sorted straight away. So I tend not to, in the middle of a middle point of just getting a manuscript done, I don't read, but it is so vital that you do. Like, that's only for a very short time. Reading about writing, other people's writing. Stephen King's got this amazing memoir / writing process book that is brilliant for the tips, what works for him, what how to write, how to actually get your voice out to be heard. So, but reading books is amazing, especially on World Book Lovers Day. It's, of course we have to say, it's brilliant. It's really, and all kinds of books.
And Fiona, can people
I don't know whether you can hear me, guys.
You can. We can hear you, Mark.
But we cannot see you.
Yeah.
You can't see me. Oh, you can hear me, but can't see me. Oh, that's not good, is it? I was just wondering if you've been able to teach Julio how to write a book yet, Fiona.
Getting close. I like his. I like the story arc and the ending. That was really cool.
See, we go from there. First, I got to start it off, I think. So, so how do you relate with fiction books? Most of the writers I've noticed that, especially reading some work of art, that basically got a very distinct way of putting their personality into the book. But building characters, that must be like a bit of an art, isn't it? Like, to actually build characters.
It really is, and it's one that I have not dipped into nearly as much. You usually find, although no, that's not true, but you would usually find an author that's writing fiction or non-fiction, not necessarily both. I have tapped into writing a children's book, which will be out probably early next year, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's probably even scarier than some of these other books. But this is the way I've done that with characters, is I had to actually get in writing a children's book in first person. It's a journal, and I have to actually step into her character. And I have found that really tricky, brilliant, but tricky. And then when you read also as many other books in the same genre to get that help. And I've got pictures of what this girl looks like. You need to know your characters really well. So down to the freckles, red hair, everything. That helps. But and that's where not only do you need to know your audience, you need to know your characters intimately. You need to almost become.
Daniel's got a good couple of comments here. He's saying Stephen King's book was called On Writing. And then also a question I was about to ask too is, do you know any podcast books or other sources about the writing process? And I was also going to say, can people watch YouTube or anything like that to learn, or like you're saying, any sources?
Yeah, there are a lot. Off the top of my head right now, Stephen King I always go back to. He's just my number one favorite, that book. And it depends what you want. There are lots of podcasts. You just Google podcasts on writing, and they are all over everywhere. And what I tend to do with people is help them. My advice is find the personalities that you like, because most of what's being told and taught will be the same. Find the people that you relate to, and then, because that's when you'll listen. The process is all the same, and then you make big decisions like, am I going to self-publish or am I going to go traditional publishing route? Am I going to design it myself? Am I going to do an ebook, or am I going to do an ebook in print? Am I going to do an audiobook on top of that? Who am I going to get to do the audio with? So these are all questions that can be answered across Google. But I would start with,
how do you find out the answers to all those things? There's so many different platforms.
There really is. And the other thing is that everyone gives different advice. And advice changes. 12 years ago, it was more important to get a publishing deal through a publishing house. And if you self-published, then you'd have to buy boxes and boxes and boxes of books. There wasn't really print on demand. It wasn't as an option. Now, with companies like Ingram Spark and Amazon, people put in orders,
Amazon,
they get printed. It's a huge difference. And there are a lot of resources about self-publishing as well. Like I said, there's a lot of different platforms to help you with your editing. There's Fiverr, all the way up to private designers that can help you along the way. But coaches are really good in helping you navigate that process, because it is individual depending on all those things that we talked about. And
can people write things from that audio or from the video? I remember years ago, going back, 10 years ago, a television editor and journalist asked to film a particular journey about myself. I need to go and find a YouTube video. But then I always thought, could I write from that or create, whether it be another documentary book or who knows, not sure. But, can you write from those different sources as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's amazing what you can, in different content as well, you can use in different ways. It's really important. Yeah. I'd be interested in that story.
No.
And what about the financial aspect too? Because obviously people sort of think, okay, right, is it worth putting in all that time and energy into writing something?
Yeah.
And because there's so many different platforms, or do they stick to that traditional type?
Yeah, financial is absolutely a thing to consider. Really, the goalposts are so wide, and I think it's less and less likely lately that someone who just chooses to write and goes, I'm just going to write, gets a publishing deal off the bat. It's more likely that they would be publishing and self-publishing first. And then sometimes books get picked up by publishing houses that way. Ebooks are pretty cheap to get up and happening. And you can put them up on Amazon. And there are a lot of ebooks also that don't go through that process upon process of editing and perfection. And there's a lot of ebooks that do actually really well on Amazon that have had a really quick turnaround. Most authors don't tend to then write for the income as the main source of income. You have to actually really love and choose it. That's actually what you want to do. There are more authors that are side hustlers than actually as their full-time gig. But, you know, there are always different platforms depending on your budget as well.
And you mentioned earlier about that 30, and I don't know if you've seen it, Julio. I know I have on social media and the likes, where the 30 days, you know, you can publish or do this or do that. What do you think about that, Fiona, those grabs?
I look, you know, give it a go. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. But usually what I find is it's something that's very, like, I've got this bit of knowledge. Usually those books, quick turnaround, are, I already do this for work. It's just like a bigger PDF, really, that happens. There's just too much else that goes on in a person's brain, especially if it's a story that they've held on to for a while. I've had people come in and said, I've been trying to write this for 10 years. I'm like, we're not going to do it in the next 30 days then, because there's been a reason why you haven't finished it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It happens, but I just don't think it's the norm and really realistic.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, we're getting to the time now for your top 5 tips that we want you to give all of our listeners and viewers. And for anyone who does have questions like Daniel and any of our listeners and viewers for Fiona to answer, we're really curious to hear from you. So feel free to post them up. Fiona, what's the first tip that you want to give to our audiences tonight about a bit about your background, writing, everything involved?
Yeah. I am passionate about helping people find their voice, and that everyone has a story inside of them, and that anyone can write. That is my number one. Everyone is creative. Find what you're creative in, whatever writing looks like to you. And like I said, it could be an oral. You could just record your story for future generations. That's really powerful as well. So know why you want to write as well. That'll get you a long way in the writing process. When it comes to actually,
so the first one would be to know why you want to write.
Know why you want to write, absolutely, and then work out how you want to write. That's really big as well. Yeah.
So is that what you saying about those different platforms, or is it the time of day? Is it saying, oh, actually, I want to write midnight? That's where I get my creative juices flowing. Or
that's exactly what it is. So how is whereabouts you want to write? Like, is it a cafe where you find it, or do you want to get closed up in your bedroom? That's where your creative happens. Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Do you like lots of noise around you, or really quiet? That's really, really powerful as well. I've said it before, but this is really important. Don't listen to your inner critic at any stage. Really, because that will stop you at every point of the process.
So would you say write without that fear of judgment?
Yeah, which is hard to do. It is something that's very powerful and important. It's sort of like when you don't want to listen to someone else outside, you're just like, nope. Really, really important. When it comes to writing, less words often say more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how do we know so when you're saying less words often say more, is that for the editor, or is that for us to know, like you were saying earlier, knowing your style too?
Yeah, knowing your style. And also we think that we have to, when we sit down to write, we have to write a lot for it to be of any value, or we have to get through a certain number of words a day, and we put all this pressure on ourselves to just write all the time. And sometimes also we can say the cat sat on the mat and that's enough, rather than flousing it out with a whole lot of other descriptive words that actually people don't want to hear. So there's lots of different things in that statement.
And what would be your 5th tip?
Yeah, my 5th tip is to this is probably also the most important one, is as a creative or as a writer to really just know that regardless of what happens with your books, regardless of what happens in life in general, that you're enough as you are, regardless of how many people buy your books. If you ever even finish your book, it's okay. You're enough. And again, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and that stops the creativity. That stops our belief of and our desire to do anything in the end. Yeah. So they're 5 mixed in with the other points that I have mentioned tonight. But for me, they're really powerful, and that's what I notice when I work with a lot of people, is those things keep coming up, which you can't necessarily all of them get in a course, in one of those, step-by-step processes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Julia, do you want to bring up those top 5 for our listeners and viewers tonight? Yep. I think they're really good points, Fiona, really good. So first one, know why you want to write. So you think, Fiona, to touch on that, is it sometimes a healing piece as well? Do you think that maybe? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, and you also might want your it could be, you might want to be a famous writer. That could be a good enough reason. Yeah. You might also just want to have your future generations know your story. Yeah. Really powerful. Yeah.
First one, know why you want to write. Second, know how you're going to write.
Yeah.
Very key. Don't listen to your inner critic. Less words often say more. Know what you need to write.
Yeah.
And the last one I didn't get, sorry. I've been in 2 different words.
Yeah, no. The last one is, regardless, at the end of your project, regardless of whether you finish or not, regardless of how many books you end up selling, who likes your work, who doesn't, you are enough.
Yeah. So knowing your self-worth regardless.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. Oh, well, I think it's so many really good takeaways, Fiona, because there's writing. I mean, writing has been going for thousands of years. Think back to when some of the first pieces ever released, or the different environments people would write in. It's hard to believe that.
Yeah.
Julia, what do you think? Does that sort of motivate you to be wanting to write something, or putting something up online, or?
Well, it actually does motivate me to start thinking about not journaling, but more making an experience out of what you're journaling. So, to me, it was more of an idea, just put down my thoughts. But listen to Fiona, I think it's an idea of putting there your thoughts, but having a story behind that thought.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And you definitely made me thought, maybe I should go and find that YouTube channel and video and be like, how could I flesh that out? Or could that be a written piece, or who knows, online piece? Yeah. And now, Fiona, do you coach people, do you, as well? So for anyone who is listening or watching who wants to write a book or wants to write a piece, you coach them, do you?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So it's one of my favorite things to do. I walk people through this process from, that idea, or maybe they've sat on the idea for a long time, through to publishing. Coaching is great. So I do. And you can find out more about that on my website, which is thehappyscribe.com.au.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you never know, you might be getting a call from someone like myself to be. So I think having someone like you, a coach, it's that accountability partner, to be brainstorming and having some ideas. Otherwise, sometimes you don't get around to doing it, do you? Or you sort of think, where do I start? Like you said, to start with. Where do you begin? What's the process?
Yeah. And it's so funny. I often have people come in after a week of not doing a lot of writing, and they're like, oh, goodness. And they're like, I don't want to ever write again. But by the end of the session, they're like, okay, we've got a plan. So the plan is really important. And someone who's cheering you on regardless, holding space. It comes back to holding space for people, and allowing them to walk out the process at their pace with a little bit of nudging every so often.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, it's been wonderful to have you on the show tonight, Fiona. Any sort of last thoughts that you want to leave our listeners and viewers with this evening?
Yeah. It's been so lovely to chat, and I'm very grateful for my voice for holding the reins.
Yeah.
I would like to encourage everyone that they are absolutely creative. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't think I could paint. I didn't think I could draw. I could play piano, but that to me was a lot more logical. It's very mathematical, and so I really want to encourage everyone that regardless of what you think you can do, is to find your creativity, whatever that looks like for you. And it might be writing, it might not be, it might be gardening, it might be riding bikes, and that's creative in itself. So that would be my take home. And if I can write, that's the other thing. If I could write, anyone can, because I had no idea what I was doing, really. I was cut and pasting, like literally cut and pasting. So if I can do it, anyone can. You find your voice, and don't let anyone tell you that you don't have one, because you do.
Oh, well, and Julio, any final thoughts? I 100% agree with Fiona. And I always remember someone saying to me, even if you're not creative, using your left side and your right side of your brain is the best thing, because then it balances out each other. So I'll never forget that.
Yeah, I got a very similar story. I got told the same thing, but more to the lines is the logical needs a bit of dreaming for it to actually for you to survive.
That's right.
So yes, so it's been fantastic having you in the program and listening to your story and advice. It's been fantastic with that. And
probably our listeners and viewers who want to be getting some coaching from Fiona to jump on to happyscribe.com.au. And hopefully Mark will be back with us to next week. And as Daniel, one of our viewers, has said, creativity and game playing. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Completely agree. Well, thanks everyone for joining us this evening, and see you all next week.
See ya. Bye. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tune in every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. or watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and follow us on LinkedIn and other social media.